Three, two, one. What's going on, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. My name's Ash. Here's today's comic. Shane and Paul Bookman's radically rearranged Ronin Ragdolls. Oh boy. With me, as always, is Stan the man. He's got his big drink. Thirsty, aren't you, Stan? A little bit about me. When I first started collecting comics, the first comic I ever bought was X-Men 162. Picked it up off a spinner rack somewhere, I don't even remember where. Didn't know what I was doing, it just looked cool, wanted something to read. Picked it up, and it planted a seed in me that years later I would end up buying again. I would decide, oh, comics are cool. And I remember I was with my grandparents as I was every summer. I was about, I want to say 12 or 13 years old, and I picked up X-Men 210. We went to like a drugstore, they had a book rack area, with magazines and comics and stuff like that. And X-Men was on the stand, and I was like, I picked that sucker up. I actually think they had multiple copies now that I think about it. I think, so 210 was the one I picked up, and it has the gray cover with the X-Men all standing there posing, looking menacing, and on it says, go ahead, mess with us, make our day. And it just looks so cool and badass to, like a 13-year-old boy. I think also 211 was on the shelf, and I picked those up. That started my future. I ended up getting a side job at a comic book store, paid for my comics. I started collecting the comics going forward and backwards, and filling out my collection and becoming a massive X-Men fan. But as I worked in a comic book store, I got introduced to all these type of comics that you didn't see in the drugstores and on the newsstand, these indie scene books. The big one, of course, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic I ever bought, number 7. And it's always stuck with me. I've loved Marvel Comics, big Marvel fanboy, but I also loved these sort of down and dirty indie books. Look at that art. It's sufficient for the book, but this is definitely nothing you'd ever see in a Marvel book. Well, maybe today. But that was fine, though. It was fine. Like, there was the amateurness of the art lended to the appeal. It was black and white pages, and of course there was no comics code affecting it, and they could just do whatever they wanted. And there was a sort of feel in these books of like, this is a comic I could create. This is the sort of thing where, like, maybe when you're in high school or whatever, and you have that one person who could draw really well, and you're like, oh, you could draw comics. So this is something they might do. So fast forward today, I saw this on the shelf, and I was like, oh, look, it's like an old homage to TMNT. And they've done this in the past. There's, I think the most famous book in the past is Radioactive Black Belt Kung Fu Hamsters or something like that. Direct ripoff of TMNT, of course, with hamsters. So I saw this, and I was like, oh, this looks really neat. And like, check this out. Like, I was like, wow, this cover is astonishing as far as like the quality of paper that they did. They did super high gloss, thick paper for the cover. Something you don't really ever see in an indie book of this type. And I expected this book to be like $5.99 or whatever, because it's pretty thick. And I was like, oh, it's only $3.99. That's pretty amazing. And so I was like, maybe I should just pick this up, because it was reminding me of that love that I have for old school indie books. And we think of indie books today, we don't think of stuff like this. We think of more like the highbrow, sophisticated type of indie books that a lot of Image stuff is putting out, that aren't really meant for kids anymore. It's this sort of like slice of life stuff, or they're trying to have this real meaningful, message spewing books. So usually a lot of these books are more tailored towards women. They're not really even like action oriented. So, and that's all fine. Everyone has their own place. I'm not trying to bash any comics or whatever, but indie comics aren't like this anymore. So I saw this on the shelf, and I'm like, wow, this feels like an indie book, although the production values, the publishing values are way higher than I'm used to. So someone was telling me, I was like, oh, I don't know, my budget's already kind of full. I can't really add it. And I was like, well, maybe just one book, so I could do the review, whatever. And there's multiple covers. And so I was flipping through, and like they had a cover, like, I'll show you here. They had different covers, and they had like a Frank Miller homage cover by Kevin Eastman. Of course, I'm a big fan of Kevin Eastman. And they had these different covers. This one is an homage to TMNT issue number 1. They had that cover. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And then I saw this. There was only one of these. And I'm a massive fan of Usagi Yojimbo. It's my favorite comics of all time. It's an indie comic. It looks very indie, although Stan's evolved into a stellar artist these days. He's more of a cartoonist style, but it's stellar. The writing quality of Usagi Yojimbo is beyond. It's amazing. It just puts mainstream comics to shame. Usagi Yojimbo is like a league of its own. I didn't discover this till later because Usagi didn't have his own book in the early days. He was in part of Albedo, which had print runs even less than TMNT, I think, and you could not get that stuff. Anyways, so I saw this cover. I was a big fan, and I'm like, oh, the nostalgia just is pulling me in. Even though it's a blatant ripoff of TMNT, I saw that Usagi was on the cover. I'm like, oh, Kevin Eastman's involved? Oh, wow, okay. And then I looked at the creative team, and I'm like, created by Kevin Eastman and David, but why does it say Shane and Paul Bookmans? They're not listed anywhere. Character designs, it's not. So I don't understand why it's Shane and Paul Bookmans. Shane Bookman check out this other book by Shane Bookman. And I'm like, this is weird. I don't know. Maybe it's a dedication to him. I'll have to find out. If anyone knows, put in the comments, please. So, unfortunately, I thought Kevin Eastman did the entire art, but he only does the layouts. The final art is by this guy, Troy Little. Kevin Eastman is a co-creator and did the story, although the script is by David Avalone. But that's okay. Now, this book is everything you'd kind of expect out of a TMNT book. In fact, this isn't just a ripoff book because this is Kevin Eastman. So this is one of the original guys, the creators of TMNT. This isn't like the Radioactive Black Belt Hamsters, though that was just a completely different people trying to just cash in, right? On like, oh, we can make our own version. So this, I believe, is Kevin Eastman kind of wanting to revisit Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and kind of reimagine like what they would do today and come up with something new. And one distinct factor about this, besides the fact that they're cats instead of turtles, is that they're all girls. So where TMNT is all 4 boys having adventures, this comic is about 3 girls having adventures, and they're ninja cats, right? So here they are. Crash, radically rearranged Ronin Ragdolls. They just call them the Ragdolls because that name is pretty stupid, actually. But you can see they're having a whole thing here. And they have the wannabe Miller-esque narration, which was cool about the old school TMNT. My sister Miyazaki says it's an abomination, which became a miracle. I do not call us a miracle. I call us, this. So we get to see them. And the comic doesn't waste any time. It just immediately jumps into the action. We have these characters fighting bad guys, ninja-esque bad guys that have these like stun baton weapon things. And they work for a villain called the Overdog, which of course, haha's on the nose, right? They're cats, the villain's a dog, of course, type thing. It all seems silly, but it's silly in a good way. It's silly in a childlike, whimsical fashion, not like adults being silly Billy to each other, thinking like how that weird creepiness that you get in modern comics where you see that silly Billy humor and you're just like, this isn't even written for adult or for kids. This is written for adults who still imagine themselves as 12-year-old little girls. And it's really off-putting, and any adult reading it, it just sends a weird chill down its spine. This feels like a children's book in a way. Not a children's book, but like young adult, like a teenager, like 12-year-old girls, 10 to 12-year-old girls, I think, would get a kick out of this, right? Imagining themselves as ninja cats. The characters are funny in the same way kind of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are, but they're not like all broski the way the Turtles are. They refer to each other as sister, and, one is like the quiet type. And then it's very kind of like the Turtles, how each one is a different type. But I feel like, honestly, this book is, do you have girls and they're not as into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as like the boys? Like, here's their book. It's really, that's what this is. It's fun. You see, here's the overdog. He's got a plan. He's tricking them. And so they fight and win. And then one of them's like, I'm going to go, spy. And they're like, I don't know, you should go by yourself. She's like, don't worry, I'll be stealthy. And here she is in the shadows. And she's spying down. And the rest of the two sisters, they're on their way home. And they come across, it's New York or wherever. And kid getting mugged, of course. And really cheesy, like, dialogue that only kind of happens in comic books. Listen, little puke, you're gonna do this for us. It's no big. You're gonna do it. He don't talk, so he gets a beat down. Sometimes, however, situations a man risks to be taken. My sisters, even more than I, will act without fear. I envy them, their ability to only act in the moment and act as the moment requires. And they leap down, take out the muggers, high-five themselves. Cool beans! They didn't see us coming, and they won't see us go. Sister? Oops. The boy that they saved saw them, so she's like scratching her head. And so you look at this art, and it's like, it's cute, but it's not cutesy, right? That's like that difference. This is like, hey, let's draw something cute that kids would like, not cutesy for, Arrested Development adults that still can't leave their childhood, and it's just weird. So back to Tezuka, I believe is the name. She's following the guy who left. And of course, it's all part of a trap, as we know. And then we get to see their version of Master Splinter, this woman. And she runs a sushi shop, of course, right? But it all actually plays out, makes sense. They bring the boy home, and she's like, what are you doing? Da, da, da. And it echoes back, of course, to their past when they got rescued by her and her husband. And the kid doesn't talk. And he's just like watching the whole time. And they're like, okay, well, we'll bring him in and give him a safe place. And he's like, oh, look, he's all excited. And he sees the swords, and he's looking at it, and they're telling him, you are drawn to the katana, but it is not a toy, little warrior. If you are dedicated and want to learn, someday I can teach you how to wield it. So little moments like that are kind of fun. And he just smiles. And so they tell him, they sit down, it's like, let's tell a story. They're getting ready for bed. And so the story they tell is of their origin. So the rest of the book is this origin. And then they were bought by this mysterious general who works for Draw. And they were tested, went through all this like testing and stuff. And it's very kind of 80s cheeseball type stuff, but that's actually that's actually a good thing. I say that in praise, like, that works for the comic. And these bad guys show up, and they're mortal enemies to the general guy that bought them, and they get in a fight. And look at it as a total, like, Nick Fury-esque kind of guy. He's just chomping on a cigar. It's just so cheesy but cool. And then the kittens are, like, running through. They're like, getting away, and they end up going through all these different chambers. They go through the gamma ray lab, the cosmic ray lab, the genetic mutagen lab. They go through the whole gamut. And then they end up escaping. And they realize, oh, hey, look, we can talk. Oh, wait, what? You can talk? You can talk? How? I don't know. So they're just like, okay, we're more than cats. So They run and make their escape, and now just blah, blah, blah. And they come across this mugging that's happening, and you can recognize the woman right there. There's her husband. And they just jump in and scratch them all up. The husband's like, oh, so they end up taking him in. And my battery's dying, so I need to cut this short. All that stuff, basically the type of stuff you'd realize. Then we cut back to the present, and they're tracking down. They decide we're going to go once and for all get rid of the overdog. And, the trap has been set. They're going to meet at Shea Stadium. But they don't know that Overdog is onto him, that he set this trap. So they think they're going to get the jump on him. And surprise, of course, they don't. And Overdog's like, aha, it was a trap. And he leashes his minions down, and they're beating him, and they have this big fight. And it looks like it's going really badly. And there's this like, Ragdolls come to play. The dogs will remember the day that they got beat at Shea, because it's at Shea Stadium. And so they're fighting, and he takes the boy as hostage because he was sneaking around the whole time. And he's like, aha, I know you care about them. And they're like, you killed our father. And your father, I don't remember you killing any cat and stuff. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to, the number 7 train's coming. I'm going to drop a boy, surrender. And the boy is like, no. Remember, he hasn't talked at all at this point. And he elbows him and bites him. And he's like, oh, no. And immediately the cat's like, throw there, and she's like, what, duck lad? I thought that was a little weird, like to have these like ninja samurai cats say lad. That seemed out of place. Maybe duck boy, duck son, something. I don't know. The lad was weird. But anyways, it works. Duck lad. Anyway, the swords impale into the boss. And he's like, ah, and he falls back into the tracks, of course. No. And then, what's her name? Otomo. So there's Miyazaki, Otomo, and Tezuka. And they're named after, instead of Leonardo and all that, named after the famous Renaissance artists, they're named after famous anime and manga artists. And there's parts in the book, actually, where, like, Miyazaki, they're talking about her name. She's, like, reading Nausicaa. So if you know these people, Katsuhiro Otomo, did Akira. If you know these, like, it's a kind of a neat little dig. So Otomo is the super badass one. And she's like, come at me, dogs, meet your fate. And Tezuka's like, enough. Your leader's dead, da-da-da. And they're like, we'll get you later, cats. And so they take off. And they're like, we'll be ready for you. Hey, the little one spoke. My name's Kirby. And I was like, oh, of course, Kirby. That's cool, right? So you have these great manga artists, right? And then the one American guy, famous American artist, Kirby. Thanks for the assist, Kirby. I want to be a ragdoll. One day at a time, little warrior. Let's head home, I'm hungry. I could really go for some mom sushi. Sushi for breakfast? Of course, you have much to learn about being a cat, Kirby. The beginning. And that's it. That was Radically Rearranged Ronin Ragdolls #1. And I really enjoyed this. It's not really a comic book for me, however. Like I said, I think this target audience is 10, 12-year-old girls. Boys can like it too. I don't think it's like a girly thing. I just feel like it's like, hey, let's take the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and tweak it just a little bit to be a little bit more for girls. I think just like, because in fact, my neighbor's daughter, she loves Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So obviously girls can like, but that's what I just think that it is. I also think that regular comic book fans, if you're an adult, you can like this too. I did enjoy it. It was very fun. It was very whimsical. I had a smile on my face. There was a part where I was like, oh, this is kind of going down the little girl path a little too much for me. And then it immediately picked up. Immediately was like, oh, no. Oh, okay, so that was red herring. That wasn't at all what I was thinking it was going to be. It's just a fun, very much in the vein of TMNT. Very much the stories are just simple adventures. It's not trying to get all dark and complex and, highbrow entertainment. It's just like, look, there's good guys, there's bad guys, we fight them. And if you enjoyed old school TMNT comic books, this is very much exactly in that vein. It's just Ninja Cats, slightly different, different skin, if you will. This might be for you. Check it out. I think number one, if you know a little girl or maybe even a little boy, I think this comic is very appropriate for all ages. So this is the type of book I would promote to kids. A lot of Marvel comics, I wouldn't. A lot of it's just social propaganda, gender politics bullshit that it's meant to groom children into thinking certain, it's garbage. This is just solid, fun, wholesome entertainment. Good guys beat the bad guys the way it should be. And so yeah, thumbs up for me. And taking it for what it is. Hopefully, if this is something for you, you'll enjoy it. And like I said, the quality of this book, it's almost too good. These pages, everything is solid. For $3.99, a small press did this for $3.99. They didn't have to do $25, $35 Indiegogo book to make this. This is the way comics should be. If you support indie comics, this is what you should support. This is the type of book that deserves your support. If it's not for you, of course, that's fine. But there's nothing inherently wrong about it. It's just going to be purely on your taste. So hopefully this was value to you. I know this is not going to be on anyone's radar. It's a micro comic. But thanks for watching. And look forward to Sagyo Jimbo's coming out next month. Or this month. Holy shit. All right. See you next time. It's time for another Jail 8 webcomic. Number 40 by Yale Stewart. Okay, so I'm going to be Rainbow Dash because we're both fabulous. And you'll be Twilight Sparkle because your guy's hair is dark and she likes books like you. Okay. Ladies. Jeez. Bruce, what are you doing? Testing the suit's stealth abilities.